This content is brought to you in part by Supreme Auctions, the only luxury auction company recommended by the Institute. Supreme Auctions is widely recognized as the first auction company to design a program to work alongside and in partnership with luxury real estate professionals and their clients. Go to supremeauctions.com to learn more. So welcome back, David. It's always so great to have you here. And I have to tell you that every time you're here, we get emails, and I'm sure you do as well, about how great the podcast was. So I'm going to, for those who haven't heard you before, I do want to give you a minute to talk about your history and how you got in this business and who you serve.
Well, thank you, Diane. And it's always a pleasure to be here with you. Just in a nutshell, I was in the advertising industry when I got out of school. We were in the print world, or the film side of the advertising world. And when digital came out, our industry went from 200 million to zero. I went to my mom and said, now what do I do? And she said, why don't you become an agent? Because she's been one for 30 years. And so I lived in Marin County, California. I was 30 years old, and I became an agent. 2.5 years later, I was the number one RE/MAX agent at half the age of most of the agents. And it wasn't my nature to sell real estate. That whole interaction in the private, I was uncomfortable with it. And so I moved to South Florida and started a marketing company for real estate agents, ran it for 10 years and then sold it. And in a moment of insanity, I started a real estate brokerage, a high-end luxury real estate brokerage in Boca Raton, and ran it up to about 29 agents. And after 2.5 years, I realized I still didn't like that side of the business, and sold it to Lang Realty, which is one of the largest companies in all of South Florida, and moved back to San Diego in 2007 and started real marketing again on a little 800 square foot place. And today we have 51 employees and 20,000 square feet, 1,700 clients we deal with monthly. But the key is, you still only deal with real estate professionals, right? Yeah, absolutely. I don't, I've always been, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. I have spoken with him, had the pleasure and the honor to do that. And he's like, do what you do what you know best. As you start diverting, it's almost like if you're a real estate agent selling residential and you start doing commercial, you kind of get divided. A man, what do they call it? A man divided in his ways is good at everything, but great at nothing, So we love this industry. I love my clients. Most of them are my friends. I could go to their house and they would come to the door in a house coat. It wouldn't be a problem. It's a lot. I did it to you yesterday, though. That's true, but that's okay. We won't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Yeah. So I just love the business. It's a lot of fun. And those my clients and those agents that I watch really grow. I watch them and I understand how they grow and why they grow, and then those that don't grow and how they don't grow and why they don't grow. And I've studied it for 30 years. Yeah. And I've seen, in 30 years, I've seen every market. I've seen ups and downs. I've seen the recession in 2007 and 2005. I saw this run we're on right now is probably a 12-year run. Yeah. And so there will be some form of correction. There always is. Yeah, there's ups and downs in the business, and being prepared for those, I'm going to say it's critical. And I'm going to share with just quickly, I watched so many agents not be prepared for that the last time the market turned down, and most of them are out of the business. Those that were and continued to market, they didn't make as much money, but they changed their expectation so that they knew that 100 houses sold last month and now only 50. So I'm going to lose some income here. But I'm not going to start doing what's going to get me the 50. And so many times agents stop their marketing because their sales went from 100 to 50 or 20 to 10. And they stop marketing. And guess what? They don't do the 10 anymore. And now it's just, I watched it, Diane, so many times, so many agents. I watched agents that were just making $250,000 a year 20 years ago, which was big money. That's the equivalent. Yeah. That's equivalent of about $750,000 a day. Out of the business, like literally in a matter of 6, 7, 8 months, because their income started to decline. And so the first thing they did is cut their marketing. Well, if you cut your marketing, you're cutting your source of income, right? You're cutting what makes you that money. It's a real hard thing to do. And I totally get it. I was thinking about our conversation today, and I was like, what would be one huge tip I could give all of my agents? And that is put yourself on a salary. If you make 40,000 this month and 10,000 next month, you should be on a salary. It's just a great way to budget. And as these markets turn, if you put yourself on a salary, first of all, you have to make enough money to write that check.
Yeah.
Anything above and beyond that should be in your bank account. All right. So now you go down the road, you do this for 3-4 years, and you've got a stockpile of money that's going to last you. I think you should have 6 months of both marketing dollars and all of your expenses. When I work with my agents and my friends, and we have these conversations, then I tell them, look, when you start getting more business, then you always keep your 6 month intact. When you start getting more business, start a separate checking account. We've talked about this in the past, is called marketing. So now you're going to just skim a little off the top, maybe, if $1,000 a deal, and put it into the marketing budget. Once that gets to about $10,000 or $12,000, that's about an annual spend with our clients is, call us and say, hey, I'm looking for another great neighborhood to market. Or you may even call and say, hey, David, I really like this market. And we're going to coach you to make sure that you're not picking a market that is either dominated by another agent or doesn't have enough turnover or enough homes. So those are the three factors we kind of look at.
That's a lot of incredibly good information. And now I'm going to unpack it a little bit for our listeners. First, when we talk about a correction, right?
Right.
We're in the middle of really the greatest run of for most of these agents for their professional career. Right?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
That's outstanding. So your advice to make sure that you're managing your income and outgo appropriately. So, but because what we're seeing in the report we put out every month is just the difference between the report literally just released yesterday and the month before, is these markets that had sales ratios that meant like triple and quadruple the number of homes sold in a month that were listed, that has pulled back. And so now we're in what I call a fabulous market.
Absolutely.
And so what also we want to talk about is that's an attitude, right? That's an attitude that says, gosh, we're still in a great market. We still have drivers outside of us that are creating the demand for this thing that we sell.
Got it.
So when we talk about that and we say where we are in the run up, we're just entering, we've exited the summer. We're now entering the fall market. And we're looking at the things that agents really need to do right now outside of the frenzy, outside of the 10 days on the market or 1 day on the market and the multiple offers. From your seat and the number of years you've served people and what you're telling your team to do, because your team is one-on-one with these folks.
Right.
When we go in the luxury market from, the stratosphere, as I like to say, back down to the hemisphere, what does that mean for agents and how they should be marketing?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes I make, this is just a tip, a great tip. When an agent sends us for a just listed postcard or just sold postcard, sold in 1 day, we send it back to them and say sold in less than 2 weeks. So right now, this is one of the biggest mistakes I always see when the market gets super hot. Is everybody wants to stand on the mountaintop and say sold it in 1 day. Well, I do these seminars all over the world. And anyway, I'll ask this question to an audience and I'll say, all right, who sold the house in 1 day? And everybody raises their hand. And I say, great. Now tell me what the homeowner thought. Sold it too fast, not enough money. You got way overpaid for the amount of effort you put into this. Right? So if that's the thinking of our clients, let's be smart marketing. It's just as powerful to say sold in less than 2 weeks. Now, a little controversy here, right? It's a mindset, because then I think, oh, you spent time marketing my house and you got it sold in 2 weeks, which was great. This might be a little controversial. I've seen it I'm in the marketing world, and I think anybody that sold a house in 1 day might want to take a look at their marketing efforts. Because if it's supply and demand, and the demand is so high that you sold it in one day, how many other people are out there that maybe were on vacation that day and didn't get to see it? The moral of the story is, are you getting all of the offers that you could have? So I'm just going to leave it at that. And it's just my opinion, and it goes on and on and on. All right. As the market comes down off of this high, there are a couple of things which just talked about. It's a couple of things that happen. When houses sell really quick, a lot of times the agents will stop marketing because they don't need to. I mean, they're just trying to keep up. The challenge they'll have when the market gets really hot, if they're, and I hate to say this, but if their administrative assistant is their marketing person, which that's a whole nother conversation. Now the administrative assistant is getting super busy because you're super busy. And guess what happens to your so-called marketing? It stops. Now the market starts to come down a little bit, just a little, like we're talking right now. And it will, my personal opinion, it will definitely come down through the fall into winter. I think spring is going to be, I think we're going to have another little uprise in spring. That's just my own personal economic, and I could be very, very wrong. And I'm not paid to say that. So when it comes, now that you've stopped marketing and it's come down, what'll happen is let's say you were selling 10 houses a year and now all of a sudden you're only selling 8, right? So, but you've stopped your marketing. That 8's going to drop to 6 or 5 or 4 because you're out of touch and out of mind. You're out of sight and out of mind. And so now you've got to come, what typically happens is that agents get really busy, they stop marketing, and then they get less busy.
Yeah.
And then they start marketing and the business picks up. And their whole career, I've seen agents for 20 years, their whole career is just this, up and down.
Well, and I'll tell you, David, I mean, giving an agent a break here, right? That is actually the most typical way anyone in the professional services arena markets, because they get a little nervous that they can't deliver. And they take their foot off the gas from a development standpoint, and you get caught wrong-footed on that. It's not a good thing. So I think that that's a fairly typical affliction of anyone who delivers what they sell.
Correct.
So if you think about it in that way, that what would you then recommend? So that's the don't. What do you recommend in a market? So we just came off this huge market.
Yep.
Still going to be huge through the end of the year.
Yep.
Right. I said it here. We will still see drivers that were driving everything the same. It's just the numbers are going to be a touch less, just a little bit less.
Right.
But so if we know we're going to be in that, what do you recommend these professionals do who had the greatest year they've ever had?
Right.
How do they approach the next 4 months?
So market, continue marketing. And it's a great, I have, Greg Newman in San Diego. I have some great clients that just do an insane amount of business. And when this happens, here's what they do. They look at their competitors that stopped marketing and go after their area because they've out of sight and out of mind. Now, all of a sudden, you've got the Greg Newmans of the world or the Stephanie Youngers of the world coming in and swooping up your market. And they have this huge sales statistics in the back. Like Stephanie will sell 250 homes this year. So she dropped to 100. She can still say, I sold 100. It's still very impressive. And she's now going to say, in your backyard, you see her doing this, and then you try and catch her. It's way too late. Second place is always the first loser. And it's in the marketing world, it's just dramatic. So I coach my clients, and this time is, first of all, you've just made a lot of money or good money. You should have put a little bit aside. Let's look at growing your market, right? So that when this market changes, now you've sold 100 houses and you're spending whatever, X, you're spending $100 and the market drops and you're down to 50. You need to probably double your marketing. But double your marketing versus double the reward is so worth it, because marketing should be like 10% of what you actually get out of it. So, right. So if now you're spending twice what you are, but you're back to making what you're used to. Right. You have to get it out of your head that is not a normal. It is an absolute normal process in every business. The only mistake people make is again and again and again is when the market drops, they drop their marketing You could go on forever on that one.
Well, I really liked what you said about making sure you pay attention to what others are doing, because if we've determined that it's an affliction to take your foot off the gas, somebody's doing that somewhere.
Absolutely.
And how do you capitalize on it? Because frankly, you're paying attention to it. So if we think about that and we use the example of, everything is essentially a geographic farm, right? It doesn't matter what price point you're working in. And also, it's one of my favorite things we say in class, right? Is that we make these assumptions that the people who are successful are satisfied. And it's one of the great punchlines of our course that the people sitting in first class on a flight are not saying, look at me, I'm sitting in first class. It's they want to be flying private. Right. So there's always some other thing, right? So if you think about that, even regardless of how dramatically successful you've been in the last, 24 months or, 36 months, because this has been around a while now. How do you set your sights on something else, maybe either higher or different? And then how does your marketing help you do that? So it's one of the more profound things that we've had you talk about, which is taking the success you've had and leveraging it.
Right. So if you've ever, and you have, and I've watched, again, for too many years, I've watched these markets go up and down. And what is rarely talked about is certain different price points are affected differently. So if the stock market lost 30% right now, your luxury market would probably be very hurt. But your price points below luxury, they're fine. They're not in the stock market. They don't have half their assets in the stock market. They're cool. So diversifying is another really, really good strategy. So when my agents have become really successful at like Stephanie Younger does pretty much $1.5 million and up. And so we had a conversation with her, and she mails 16,000 pieces a month. We're now putting her in a price point that's 800 to $1.5 million. So if the market changes, what she's got is a little backup over here. Now, here's the fun thing. What Stephanie doesn't really want to sell less expensive houses. So I said, well, Stephanie, hire a seller's agent, buyer's agent, take half of it. You're making, so much money anyway with what we're doing. And so now with the market shifts or changes, you're kind of covering all your bases. Ideally, I like 3 price points. I like the luxury. Let me make this clear though, really quick, so we don't forget this. Don't ever mix your luxury marketing with any other price point. It has to be separate. Your website should be separate. Everything about that luxury presence you have should be separate. And anyway, we'll just leave it at that.
No, don't, because I actually really like this, and I promise we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
The one of the things that you talk about is that the consumer that we're dealing with here is being marketed to by your competition, which is not real estate agents. It's the Mercedes-Benz, it's the Louis Vuitton, and what marketing they're getting for that looks, yours has to look like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But Mercedes-Benz, which I know BMW's better, but like there's a 1 Series in a BMW. The marketing for the 1 Series looks very different than the marketing for my desired car, which is the M6. Okay.
Ooh, nice car.
Really, isn't it nice?
I'm looking for the 750 Li, but go ahead.
So I think that's where we as professionals need to look at what's sitting in the mailbox of these people and how do we make sure we're doing and saying the same thing. So you made the point that the marketing needs to be different, right? At different price points, going down and going up.
Correct.
So
on the luxury side, just real quickly, on the luxury side, I think one of the things that is just critical is that we're talking about what you see when you go buy an M6 or a Tiffany's or anyway, a Porsche, whatever, any expensive item, and you see what they get in their mailbox every day: vacations, private flying, net jets. We all get in our mailbox, and that everything about those companies is the same level. It's always professional. You talk to somebody on the phone, you should meet them, you see them on a webinar. Everything is top notch, and it's consistency. In luxury, lack of consistency, I think, could really, really hurt you. It could be the kiss of death. So just a little tidbit, got my brain going again, as you always do.
Mm-hmm. Lack of consistency. That's very good, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you were also on another train of thought, and I stopped you on that this idea of taking someone and advising them when they're selling at a certain level to shift and sell at a different level as a defensive move, which I love that. Now, how do you take someone who is say they're at that level, let's call it 800,000 to $1 million, right?
Okay.
Because other than where you live, that's a luxury market. Okay. Right. So today, when they're super successful at that level and they want to grow their business, do you get them to go up higher price points or out different areas or both? Like, how do they do that?
If I was anticipating a downturn, I would definitely put them into the next price point below. So we talk about it as a defensive move. It's also an incredibly good offensive move. See, I can send somebody who lives in a $600,000 neighborhood my $800,000 results. They think, oh, this guy or gal is successful. It doesn't work so well when you send a $600,000 sale into the $800,000 market. That doesn't work.
I gotcha.
Reverse. So now in a market like right now, I think we're going to be good through the end of the year as you do.
Yeah.
I might get you to go lateral right now, another community, different, community with a game plan that we know we're going to do well to the end of the year. We're going to put some of that money aside, and then we're going to go in and target the next price point below that. That price point below that is also a feeder market into your 800,000. Your $800,000 market should be a feeder market into your $1.5 million market. Once you have activity in the $1.5 million market, we may have a conversation about, hey, let's start a luxury campaign. This would be number 4 now, right? We had our primary campaign. We went lateral, we went low, and now we're going to go high. And now you've really got, like, when this next year, God only knows what will happen.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter to me. Diane, I have a client in Boynton Beach, Florida, does $1,665,000 retirement communities. And I have Elizabeth McQueen in North Vancouver who does nothing but $2.5 million and up.
Right. Right. I really like that idea of the feeder. Always keep your eye on the feeder into the neighborhood that you're working in. And because one of the things we know for sure is that we are dealing in a low inventory market, and the low inventory market is driven by people not wanting to move because they don't think there's anything to buy.
If there's nothing, I'm in that exact scenario right now.
Yep, exactly. And so what better way than to work those folks and convince them, right, that there is something for them to buy. Right. Money, everybody knows how old I am, right? Money is probably never going to be cheaper in my lifetime than it is right now.
I don't think it's ever going to be cheaper, period.
No. And so here we sit in teaching folks about leverage, right? In trying to go from the 800,000 to the $1 million to $1.5 million. And, so we're talking about this idea of the marketing. What is worthy of more discussion than we have time for today is the what do you do with that marketing? So look, we've had a really great run at this a little bit more esoteric conversation, but you've given people 4 or 5, 6, 7 as usual things to think about. So David, thanks very much for your time today. And we're going to come back and we're really going to take the deeper dive into the what are they using? What are they marketing?